Hey peeps, how's everybody doing? Welcome to the truck. Actually, this might be one of my last days in the truck because I'm trading in, getting some new wheels. But that's not why I came on. Happy Mom's Day to all the mamas out there. I'm on my way to see mine with my brother, and but I wanted to check in real quick. Yeah, I mean, when's a better time than driving when you're focusing on the road? Because I had a really cool, interesting dream the other day that I wanted to see if I could capture, but I don't have a lot of time. So let's get to it. All right. So pardon my looking at the actual road instead of you. The dream was about, it was very strange. It was par for the course with me. It was a very other kind of place, almost like a slightly altered reality. It was futuristic and retro at the same time, by which I mean it reminded me of my roots coming up as a punk rock kid in the 80s. When I was a teenager in the mid 80s, my friends and I were punk. We were into punk, and we were into what they called post-punk rock, which was British music. Yeah, don't worry, I won't crash. Which was British music, mostly from like Manchester, bands like the Smiths and New Order and The Cure. Who else? Echo and the Bunnymen. And they followed after the first wave of punk, which was like the Sex Pistols and the Clash, and then in the United States it was bands like the Dead Kennedys and Black Flag. And when I saw these bands as a teenager, especially that awkward transition most of us, or many of us, have from middle school to high school, I was enamored of the rebellion and the humor. I mean, the Dead Kennedys, it's a somewhat offensive band name. They were from San Francisco, and one of the records that I'll never forget seeing for the first time was called In God We Trust, Incorporated. And they were totally skewering the religious right of the time, which was like Jerry Falwell and Ronald Reagan and like these neo-fake Christian types. And so In God We Trust, Incorporated was a Dead Kennedys record that featured Jesus Christ on a cross made of money. And that said a lot to me as a teenager who did not understand this new neo-Christian bullshit movement coming out of the United States that really turned out to fall on its face in time, as even our contemporary fake Christian movements fall apart in front of our eyes because they are filled with hypocrisy. They don't live by the ideals of Jesus by any means, which is love and forgiveness and inclusion and equality. And so in time, their attempts to seize power, authoritarian power or theocratic power, fail inevitably. So that's the setup for the dream. So in the dream, it was kind of like I guess you could say it was kind of like a quest, because I was looking for a somewhat famous but not famous underground artist, a female artist, like a completely rebellious female artist who used her entire life as her art and used her entire body as her art. And I knew young women like this when I was in high school and in college, and even today I see them around my bohemian neighborhood in the Allentown district of Buffalo, and it's kind of like, and I'm not really different. People who turn their very lives into the art they make themselves the vessel and often the subject matter. Pardon me. Lane change, to be polite to the oncoming traffic. Yep. So in the dream, this woman, like, basically when I say she used her body as the art form, I literally mean it. Like she, and like, again, these young women that I knew who were exploring their own emerging sexuality, like she would often appear naked or semi-naked in her works. She would paint upon her own body in her works. She would, do performance art style stuff where sort of like the teasing lasciviousness of it is part of the theme, but also with themes of feminine empowerment, feminist power, and even sometimes slogans written on the body. And this dream was about like this sort of quest to find this famous but only in the underground art circles artist woman who I seem to have some kind of connection or friendship with, or maybe she represented an archetype, and to try to find her after all these years, because she had kind of gone with the passing of time, she had gone somewhat, I guess you could say, missing, but not missing in a sinister way. So and then a lot of the early part of the dream was like looking at her artwork, and like it was almost like seeing her creating her artwork. And she also wrote, and she did like poetry, and she may have sang. She was like kind of like an all-around performer, and she had an outlandish appearance. I mean, by most people's standards, she looked. When I think about it later, if you've ever seen pictures of like, say, Nina Hagen, who is a German alternative singer, she's still alive, but she's probably in her late 50s or 60s now. But in the 80s, she was like an upcoming, hot, very outrageous German singer, and really a trip. And Lena Lovitch was another of these 80s women who were kind of like they were not in the mainstream, but they were like on the edge of crossing over. She had associations with Thomas Dolby. Remember, She Blinded Me with Science? Thomas Dolby used to play in Lena Lovitch's band. So if you want to look any of these bands up from the 80s, there's some fun stuff back there to hear. The music is fun and irreverent, freeing, liberating music. And that is the music that inspired me to become a musician and to challenge convention of all kinds. And that is also what has made my life tricky, because I have always been somewhat politically incorrect and willing to push boundaries and willing to occasionally offend, but without really meaning to offend, but willing to offend maybe the hypocrites, if you will. So that is what it is. So I was on the quest to find this artist in the dream, and like I said, the dream was like futuristic and retro at the same time, because what really stands out for me is the fashions. All the people in the dream were dressed so strangely, like futuristically. Everybody was wearing futuristic like style clothing, and like the fabrics were strange, and the colors were all vibrant, and like everything everywhere was like alive with color and expression. There was even, and I observed in the dream that even the older people in the dream dressed like wild. Like there was a woman in her 60s with short gray hair, and she was wearing like some kind of almost like spandex kind of dress that may have had the American flag sort of encompassed in and meshed into it, but with all this extra color and stuff. And I remember a guy walking in with these like shoulder pads and this silver and green suit that like looked like out of Star Trek. And so it was like a Blade Runner Star Trek future, but not dystopian, but very punk. Like graffiti everywhere, but like the graffiti was like kind of beautiful. So it was like this very rebellious, wild, alive, open version of the world that was just full of expression. So maybe that's my dreamland, in my mind, where it's rebellious and it's freeing, but it's not. It doesn't have the decay, that goes along with urban environments a lot of the time. All right, getting off the thruway here. Woohoo! Look at me go. So that was all cool. And so the quest for the artist continued. And then one of the interesting parts of the dream was that since it was sort of futuristic and retro at the same time, and I remember noting to myself that I was wearing the same clothes that I always wear, and thinking to myself, which I don't know what my dress code is exactly. I guess it's like, whatever, semi-artist type wardrobe, but not like, I'm 51. I'm not gonna dress exactly like I did when I was 16, but hopefully with a little bit of pop when I go out. When I'm at home, a cozy hoodie will do, but when I go out, I like to wear, something a little fun. Like, I don't know, is this fun? This little safari shirt, whatever the hell I got on. It's kind of Western if you look at the top and blah, blah, blah. So, yeah. So we were trying to find the artist, but we were also trying to find evidence of her works, because she had been so underground and so obscure that a lot of her works had been lost. And I came across a vendor in the street, which reminded me of the days when I used to go to New York and go to St. Mark's Place in Greenwich Village, and like you would have the vendors on the street who would sell cassette tapes, bootleg cassette tapes of everything from Grateful Dead to like Paul McCartney's home recordings, things like this that were fun collector's items on tape. And you had a lot of what they called the head shops. I'm so sorry, excuse me. Of head shops in the village and in cities like Toronto that we used to visit, where you could get like a lot of alternative like t-shirts and other bling, fun stuff to wear, or banners or posters for your bedroom, etc., etc. And there were lots of these shops, and that was like a whole quest for us when I was a young person to go and record shop. A record shop could be a whole day where you could be looking through vinyl records. And I still have a collection of vinyl from that era, from the 80s into the 90s, that I love and I listen to. So, again, we were searching for this young artist, this female artist, her works, now that she had gotten older and had fallen out of fashion, I guess you could say. And a vendor had these little crystals. They were kind of like, but they were more opaque. They were more like, actually, so one was the color of my shirt, and others may have been more like, crystalline. But he had like his palm full of these little round with, some of them had ridges on them, but some of them were more just like coins. And what they were storage devices. They were like, that was the medium upon which her artwork was stored, like a flash drive. They were like a flash drive of the future. Her art was contained within these crystals, and I guess you would have some kind of playing device, and I don't know if you would get music to play, or maybe you'd get holograms to play, since it was futuristic of her performances, because it seemed like that, because I was seeing bits of her performances kind of in my mind, her old performances, and where she would like use her body as the instrument. There's a contemporary artist, I think her name is Karen Finley, if you feel like looking her up, who does this, has done this for many years. Like one of her famous performance art pieces, which I had mixed feelings about, was basically she comes out on stage naked, and so it's provocative right off the top, but of course she would draw tons of people because it's so provocative, and I believe she would clothe herself as the performance went on. So, hey, if you're going to provoke, I guess you provoke. Sometimes the artistic message is obscured by the nudity itself, but it certainly gets people's attention and it gets them talking, which sometimes is what an artist does. It's not really my style, but it is some people's style. And so, again, with the artist we were trying to find in this dream, that was her style. So anyway, it was interesting to find the crystals that had her artwork, and to sort of, be able to find bits and pieces of her. But we didn't actually find her in the dream. So I'm not sure why, if that's a to be continued. But what I might say is that I have been feeling for some time that with everything that's going on politically, this lunge towards the right, and especially the SCOTUS leak, which drove me nuts last week, really made me mad and sad at the same time. But I feel more refocused, and I feel like now the Republicans have gone another step too far. They've stepped into the shit as usual, because that's what they do. They have miscalculated, and they're gonna lose. We're gonna either get more excuse me, more Democrats into Congress, and we're gonna codify abortion rights into law, or they're gonna back down SCOTUS now that it's been leaked. As some of the psychics have predicted, maybe one of those 5 justices will lose their nerve because there's so much outrage and pressure, and someone will back down, or they'll get back together and they'll water down the decision so it doesn't fully overturn Roe. Like, something is gonna happen. So stay hopeful. I'm back on the prayer trail. I'm back on the optimism trail after the gut punch. So I think the dream reflected all of that. And what it reflected is this feeling that I have had for some time now, that the energy, the punk rock energy that I came up in as a young man, formative years, is coming back around. There is a spirit of, it's a progressive feeling, it's a liberal feeling, it's left-wing feeling, it's a revolutionary feeling of people who are sick of the hypocrisy of these morally uptight but completely hypocritical fascists on the right. We've had it with their telling us, don't do what we say, or don't do as we do as we say, not as we do. And the abortion fight is the latest frontier, and now the gloves are off and we are going to smash them. That is my feeling. And so it's this punk rock revolutionary energy is back in the air, in my opinion, and I think we're going to see it manifested in certain ways. I think we're going to see it manifested in music and the arts itself. If not exactly like punk music, it can be the punk ethos, by which I mean you don't just take we don't go in for this commercial corporatized, the corporatocracy we live in is gonna come under scrutiny again. People do not want to live, well, I don't want to live in a corporatocracy. A lot of people are a little too passive about living in a corporatocracy. We have to get back to the power of the individual, the power of independent thought, the power of questioning authority, always, no matter what authority is selling. The inherent nature of authority always needs to be questioned, even when authority is correct. Like Biden is in authority. I think he is an excellent president. I think he has done everything, almost everything correctly, many things correctly. And but when the powers that be, especially SCOTUS, they try to use their power to suppress the free will and the civil rights of the individual as they are right now, it's time for us to smash them. It is time for us to rebel, and it is time for what I think of as punk rock energy to come back and to inspire people to fight for their own rights. Because, in my opinion, and many of the spiritualists and the psychics agree, free will is one of the greatest gifts from God. The free will to be who you choose to be, whoever that is, to have your own thoughts and feelings, to be free from the shackles of the state, the laws of the state, to get to choose how you want to live, who you want to be, how you want to express yourself, your free speech rights, your reproductive rights, your who you want to love rights. If you're a woman and you want to love a woman, or you want to love a woman and a man, or if you're a woman who thinks they're a man, or a woman who is a man, or a man who becomes a woman, you can love and be whoever you want. Okay? And that, to me, is where it's all going. And this groundswell apparently has to come from our rights being challenged. It is the unfortunate truth of mankind at this point in time on the earth that people can get complacent about their rights until they are on the verge of losing them. And You don't want to wait too long, because when you lose them, you lost them. Like everybody in Hong Kong, 8 million people absorbed by the Chinese mainland overnight, and that was it. They had democracy one day and then they didn't, and that cannot happen here. It will not happen here. So it's punk rock time, everybody. In my opinion, I think that's what the dream was trying to express. And even though we didn't find the artist in the dream, maybe she was just sort of, like I said, a symbol of this return of this rebellious energy, this fighting for your own rights and self-determination kind of energy. And I hope and feel strongly that that is where everything is headed. And we shall see what happens next on the playing field of this little game with the right. But we will prevail. So that's today's message. There's a part 2 to the dream, which was in outer space. So maybe I'll get back to a second video a little bit later. We'll see. But hopefully this one came out, because I don't know how the audio will be. So it's time to visit with Mama for Mama's Day. So again, to all the moms out there, that's one of the biggest jobs in the world. So thanks, moms, for doing the heavy lift of momming. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.